What do you get when you cross German engineering, luxury, and looks with Japanese reliability, fuel economy, and practicality? You get the gosh darn holy grail, that's what. You also get the car that like every single high school girl drives as well, for some reason. The Volkswagen Jetta. Hello everyone, my name is Mark Roden, and this is what makes the Volkswagen Jetta so great. In order to even begin talking about the Volkswagen Jetta, we need to first bring up a small car, both literally and figuratively, the Volkswagen Rabbit, more commonly known as its chosen name, the Volkswagen Golf, because that's where this bad boy originated from. The Rabbit was a simple but foolproof idea, like choosing a 4x4 when going to Wendy's, and just like the 4x4, pretty much everybody loved the Volkswagen Rabbit, unlike the people watching this video right now, since over 80% of you guys are not subscribed. So why don't you clobber that subscribe button? It'd be really beneficial for me. Back to the Rabbit though. It was a hatchback with a bit of a naughty side when it wanted to, but then boys over at Volkswagen saw the looming threat of other German sedans taking over the market and decided it was time to go 4 doors for more whores and introduced the first generation Jetta in 1979.
Is a magnificent collection of German engineered road sedans. Stop us when we get to one you can afford. The Mercedes-Benz 190e, the Audi 4000S, the BMW 325e, the Volkswagen Jetta. It's curious how many people stop us at this point.
That's right, buddy old pal. This car isn't as old as you may think, and to be honest, it's not as different as you may think from the Rabbit either. As a matter of fact, it's pretty much the same. Same wheelbase, same suspension, same engine, same looks. The only real difference being is it now has 4 doors and a trunk, which was honestly more than enough to make this car a household name almost overnight. The Volkswagen Rabbit, or Golf as we know it now, was a great commuter for the average person, but being only 2 doors and a little bit on the smaller side meant that for a family, it was sadly just not the best option. So for anyone wanting a German car at the time without breaking the bank, they almost immediately looked at the Jetta now instead of BMW and Mercedes sedans. And if you were someone who wanted something a bit sporty, well, it had you covered there too, because it came with the same motor they put in the Scirocco and of course the Rabbit at the time, a 1.6 liter inline 4 that managed to produce 676 horsepower, which, let's be real, is not super impressive in today's standards by any means, but for a car in the 80s, being able to go 110 miles per hour while taking the family to Outback Steakhouse is very, very nice, and we haven't even gotten to talk about the gosh darn GLI trim yet. The GLI, for those who don't know, is basically a Volkswagen Golf GTI, but for the Jetta platform instead. They're usually very underrated, since everyone just automatically thinks of the GTI when picking up a Volkswagen sports car, even though they're pretty much the exact same thing. As for the Mark I, the jump from the base model to GLI was pretty significant actually. Instead of a 1.6 liter, it now had a 1.8 liter, which helped it reach 90 horsepower. Still not crazy by any means, but again, this is the 80s, and the car is light as hell. The damn Ferraris at the time were making around the same horsepower as a 350Z, so 90 horsepower for an economy sedan was not bad in any means. However, I wish I could tell you that the Jetta was an instant runaway success for Volkswagen, but sadly it kind of wasn't. Even though it was larger than the Rabbit, it was still too small for the average American, so they didn't really sell too well in the States. But all that would change with the launch of the second generation. Yep, this one may look very similar to the first gen, to be honest, but it was much different. It was now a whole 4 inches longer, which is huge, by the way, and the car's personality was great too, so it doesn't even matter. It could also hold more people in both the cabin and the trunk in case you're Ted Bundy, and of course, the performance got a lot better as well. The base model still had a 1.8 liter inline 4 that made subpar power, but now the GLI variant was bumped up to a whole 2 liters, which helped it reach a very impressive 134 horsepower. For those who are new to the car scene, a damn economy sedan making 134 horsepower back then is the equivalent to like an F80 M3 or something today. And the upgrades didn't stop there either. It was given so many iconic little retro things like BBS wheels, Recaro seats, a 5-speed manual transmission, and of course fine-tuned suspension so that it's stiffer than me when I see a no-hit run in Orphan of Kos. It was a true performance sedan at this point, and it was still affordable at right around $30,000 in today's money. And all of this helped it finally beat the Volkswagen Rabbit in sales and managed to become the best-selling European car in the United States. But of course that didn't last long, and Volkswagen had to upgrade, which meant in 1993 the Mark III Jetta was released.
The Jetta Trek. This year we tried to take it one step further. The Jetta Shepherd. The Jetta Spin Drive. The Jetta Weber. Then it hit us. Let's just do the same thing, only with a Jetta and a Golf. Introducing the Volkswagen Trek. Your choice of a Golf or a Jetta, complete with a roof rack and a 21-speed Trek mountain bike as standard equipment.
It's the 90s now, folks, and we all know what that means. More curves. More curves everywhere. The Mark III Jetta is, in my opinion, the second best looking Jetta generation, right behind the Mark IV, and the reason is simple. They rounded this bad boy out. Everything about the car, from headlights, grills, trunk lines, taillights, were similar to the previous generation. However, they all got a little bit of Botox to make themselves look a little bit better. And just like before, the car was slightly larger as well, with a longer wheelbase, meaning it had even more room to fit all your copies of the SpongeBob movie. For reference, the Mark II could only hold around 10 copies, but the Mark III, at least 11. And as for the performance, well, this car was given one of the best sounding motors of the 90s in my opinion, the damn VR6. The Volkswagen VR6 is a 2.8-liter V6 that had a unique cylinder layout to help it be much smaller than your average V6, so you could cram it into little sedans like this one. Cars with VR6 motors in them are almost always very sought after, and for good reason. If you remember before, the Mark II Jetta GLI came with 134 horsepower, and that was impressive to me. Well, the VR6 Mark III managed to make a mind-boggling 172 horsepower. That is 172 horsepower in the early 90s. Late 90s, I'm going to be honest, it wouldn't be too impressive, but this was before that insane tuner car craze hit, and it's still so surprising to me how a car like this didn't get the love it deserved in the community. I mean, it was even in the Fast and the Furious, dude, so even that's not an excuse. Everybody else talks about oh, well, the Fast and Furious is what shaped the way for the early 2000s car community, so that's why. No, it was in the Fast and Furious. It was Jesse's car. Luckily, though, the car community didn't need to buy it because it managed to still sell 400,000 models in just 5 years, which pretty much single-handedly brought Volkswagen back to life in terms of sales and helped pave the way for the next generation, my personal favorite.
Sweetie? Come with me. Watch this.
The Mark IV Jetta would release to the world in 1999, the absolute golden year of car manufacturing, and there's not even another year that comes close in my opinion. This year had cars like the Mark IV Supra, R34 GTR, C5 Corvette, Lamborghini Diablo SV, EK9 Civic Type R, and of course, the little rocket ship sedan, the Mark IV Jetta, which is probably the reason why most people in the community don't really talk about the VR6 Jettas as much as they should. The competition of the time was just absolutely insane. This was also the very first time that the Jetta started to stray away from being an exact clone of the Golf. It still shared things though, and one of those things being the famous 1.8T Never Lose, which was a 1.8-liter turbocharged inline-4, and it only made 170 horsepower when stock, sure, but when you modified it, it was absolutely unbeatable for the price. The 1.8T Mark IV Jetta is one of those cars where I commonly recommend buying one if you're a new car guy trying to find a fun but reliable project. But the GLI is even better. It brought back the wonderful VR6 from the Mark III, but this time it managed to pump out a whopping 200 horsepower on the diddly dot, and of course, a bunch of cool little race car bits like fine-tuned suspension and the return of gosh darn BBS wheels. BBS wheels literally make everything better. Imagine you just ordered a pizza, all right? You got your favorite movie ready to go. Personally, for me, I'm watching Shawshank Redemption, all right? I love Shawshank Redemption. You know, maybe even some Hateful Eight action. Throw me in some Hateful Eight action in there. I'm a happy lad. So you got your favorite movie ready to boot up while eating said pizza that you just got. Sydney Sweeney is sitting next to you watching it with you, and you just got a raise at work, right? Okay, life couldn't be better, right? Wrong. In comes your boy with a set of BBS wheels. Now life can't get better. The Mark IV's looks were also incredible to me. It was simple, sure, just a box with some boxy features, but it worked so damn well. And to me, I've always kind of loved cars like that anyways. Unassuming little boxy sedans with the Mike Tyson of German motors under the hood. And of course, they didn't stop there either.
Hey, Max. New car, huh?
Yeah, the Jetta TDI clean diesel.
I got a hybrid, so, you know.
A TDI set a Guinness World Record 58 miles per gallon.
58 miles per gallon?
Ye old Mark V Jetta is easily the most controversial generation out there in terms of the looks. It changed a lot and went with a much more rounded off design than previous generations. Some liked it, some didn't, but at least everything that made the Jetta great before was still there, right? Well, kinda. It still had the incredible GLI trim, but that no longer meant as much as it did before. No more racing seats, no more BBS wheels, and no more truly fine-tuned suspension. The suspension was most definitely better, but still felt very bouncy when you compared it to older GLIs, and that's probably due to the weight and the sheer size of this car. Just like every other Jetta, it got bigger, but that sadly started to become a bad thing when looking for strictly performance out of your Jetta. Jettas are small cars with small power numbers, but they could put those power numbers to good use in the twisties most of the time due to their weight being so small. But that becomes a problem when the car starts to weigh more. The car now made a very respectful 197 horsepower coming out of a 2-liter turbocharged inline-4 instead of a VR6, which obviously kinda sucks big booty hole farts, but since the VR6 is just so special, and when you consider the Mark IV weighed 300 pounds less than it and actually made slightly more power, you start to see why some people don't like the Mark V. But hey, at least they weren't lying about saving the world, right?
It's got 10 speeds, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
The Mark VI Jetta. The Mark VI Jetta is a sick car. Another one of those cars where I tell my subscribers very often to buy one if they plan on needing a fun daily driver that won't break the bank. But the TDI models were the head of a major controversy with the company with the whole Dieselgate thing. Pretty much to sum it all up, but don't take everything that you see here for the whole story. Go look it up for yourself. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into it, so don't just take the next 20 seconds and run with that. But pretty much to sum it all up, Volkswagen just straight up pulled a silly little fibberoonie on us and said that their diesel motors were putting out 40 times less than what they were actually producing for emissions. It got the company into a ton of trouble in America, obviously, and could have been the end of them completely in America. Now, I want to make it clear that I'm only mentioning this because I feel like I have to, since it's such a big part of the Jetta's history. But at the end of the day, I care, but dude, 90% of us modify our cars and straight pipe them anyways, and then people will go like, oh my god, you have a Volkswagen? Well, you were like polluting the world and you're so bad. Then they hop in their like E46 that's just like pumping out every emissions it possibly can and then drive away. Like, it's just kind of hypocritical, I feel like, sometimes, so just wanted to put that out there. But back to the car. The Mark VI GLI was still using the same 2-liter turbocharged inline-4, but now it made 210 horsepower. Much better there, Volkswagen, but still nothing super crazy, obviously. This and the Mark V is when I personally believe the GLI started to become watered-down models, shells of their former selves. They still made improvements from the previous generations, don't get me wrong, and are still an incredible option for anyone in the market looking for something cheap, reliable, and fun, but overall they just didn't make as big of a stride as they used to. I mean, the jump from the Mark I to the Mark II Jetta in horsepower is over 40 horsepower. Then the jump from the Mark II to the Mark III was right under 40 horsepower, and the Mark III to the Mark IV, my bad, was also right under 40 horsepower. The jump from the Mark IV to the Mark V, on the other hand, well, it actually lost 3 horsepower, and the Mark V to the Mark VI only gained 10 horsepower. The jump from the Mark VI to the Mark VII was also not very crazy at only a 15 horsepower increase, and the Mark VII to Mark VIII, which is the newest generation as of right now, is only a 3 horsepower difference, all while these cars are getting heavier and heavier every single generation.
Dude, put
that thing away. They're like children here.
Again, I want to make it very clear before I get flamed by Mark VI, Mark VII, or Mark VIII owners that I am in no way whatsoever saying that your cars are not good cars. They are still incredible cars for the price that they're at, and if you're thinking of buying one, I 100% support that choice and tell you to go for it. I guess the best way to describe it is they are just different strokes for different folks. If you want a little race car that can compete with the likes of Miatas, Ford Escorts, Civic SIs, and all things motorsports, then you go with the earlier 90s models. But if you want something that's miles more practical, 10,000 times more enjoyable to drive on a daily basis, and with much more features and just more room, both cabin and cargo, then you go for one of the newer models. Plus, it's not really fair to hold that against Volkswagen anyways, since the late 80s to the early 2000s was like actually just god tier car manufacturing time, so of course those models were going to make some insane increases in performance. Every car brand was at that time. Overall, every single generation of the Jetta was an increase from the previous one, and they still haven't stopped. I don't think there will ever be a time in my personal life where Volkswagen isn't making a cool sedan anymore, and that makes me incredibly happy. In a world where tuner cars are going out the window faster than weed smoke when a 15-year-old hears his parents coming up the stairs, it's refreshing to know that Volkswagen will always be there for us, and in my personal opinion, that is what makes the Volkswagen Jetta so great. But ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of today's video of what makes the Volkswagen Jetta so great. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. Let me know what other videos you've seen in the comment section down below. Check the links in the description for any of my other social medias or any of my other YouTube channels or stuff like that. I will be leaving a comment down below, by the way, guys, with my new YouTube channel that I will be uploading any sort of gameplay videos on. So if you want to watch me play random video games, that's where you go, buddy, old pal. All right, that's where we're headed. But either way, guys, yeah, that is the end of today's video. By the way, that channel with the video game stuff, it's gonna have no theme whatsoever. So it's not gonna be like just Call of Duty, just racing games, just story games. It's gonna be whatever game I want to play, I'm gonna upload it. That's just gonna be a fun channel, so don't take it too seriously. And I don't even know if I'm gonna upload on it, if I'm being honest. Like, I want to, but then part of me is like, I don't really need to. So I don't know. And plus, I really want to lock in on this channel because, as you can tell, this is the first time I've done a what makes it great or deep dive or whatever you want to call it on this channel in, I think, like literally 2 years now. It's been a really long time since the last time we did a deep dive video on this channel, and that sucks. I love doing them, and they clearly, you guys love watching them. Deep dives, for those who don't know, are literally the reason why I can do this full time. I mean, I'll be, I guess, fully transparent with the money. So before I was doing YouTube full time, I was working at a auto parts store like part-time and then doing YouTube on the side, and I was making like $1,000 a month from YouTube. It was great, right? I was happy. But then I made one single deep dive video on the Honda Prelude, and it got like 800,000 views in like a week, and immediately changed my life and made significantly more money than I was making at any job I ever worked at. And so that's what made me be able to do it full time. And then I stopped because I got burnt out on them. And I still to this day am kind of burnt out on it. I've been working on this Jetta video for like 2 weeks now. Back when I first started the deep dives, I would get a deep dive video out every other day. I know I can get it out every other day. I easily could. I have the time to do that. But I always just kind of like, I get burnt out on them, man. They're, in my personal opinion, they're not the most fun for me personally to make. They take a lot of work, and then I'm never like 100% satisfied with the end result, which is annoying. So, but I want to start making them more often is what I'm trying to say. I want to do them much more frequently than I've been doing them before. And I think the best way for me to do that without burning myself out on them is just take it at my own pace. You know, maybe write out the script one day, film it the next day, get the background clips the next day, and edit it on the 4th day. That way I don't have to do it all in one day. I have set times that I can do it all, and I can take it slow and stuff like that. But like I said, I want to do more, so let me know what other cars you'd like to see me do deep dives on in the comments. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Das Vidania, and have a nice night.